All right, guys. Hi, hello. Good morning. Happy Monday. Happy May the 4th. If you're a Star Wars fan, May the 4th be with you. What we got going on today, this is our last week of Unit 5. We've got really two big topics left to cover. We've got the second wave of women's rights, the movement that again comes back in a new form. The last time we talked about women in America fighting for their rights was in the early 1900s, with women fighting for the right to vote. This is going to be kind of an extension of that, just like the civil rights movement as that African Americans had. It's not really like there's not a start and stop to fighting for rights. As long as there's inequality, people are going to be asking for changes. This is just, like I said, kind of a revamping of women looking to be treated the same, and not kept apart from the rest of society. So we're going to start this today, finish it tomorrow, and then the last topic we have before our test at the end of the week is the counterculture movement, which is thinking classic 60s, 70s hippies. So we're going to talk about that. All right. So grab those notebooks out, and we're going to get to it. So the new women's movement. All right. In the really starting in the 50s and then moving forward into the 60s and 70s with a lot more fervor. We're going to see the development of a philosophy and idea that, again, you're all familiar with, I'm sure, at this point, and you all have probably varying misconceptions about this particular item, and that is the development of modern feminism. Feminism is straightforward. Again, brass tacks without any kind of coloring from your opinions, is the belief that women should be equal in all ways, that economically they should be treated the same, politically they should be treated the same, socially they should be treated the same. That, again, it's not about bringing men down or trying to have women be better than. No, we're again trying to be equal. That's what feminism is all about. By 1960, we're going to see that 40% of American women are working for wages. Okay, so they have their own economic independence. Again, seeing that during the war, of course, we had a lot of women financially independent, and then after the war it kind of reverted back to the more traditional style, where you saw men were the breadwinners and women were staying at home. By the end of that decade, things will start to kind of change. Again, women are just going to start to kind of just adjust their overall thought process on where they want to be and what they want to do. Um, we're going to see that an interesting commission gets appointed by JFK during his administration. This commission, just like all the commissions we've talked about, is trying to examine a problem through the use of experts. The Presidential Commission on the Status of Women, which was established in 61, was trying to understand the gender gaps in the workplace. It was determined to try and figure out why is it that, again, unattached women were living below the poverty line at such a higher rate than the rest of the country. Again, single women and minorities are the ones who make up that lowest bracket of American society. And JFK and his administration kind of wanted to figure out why. Why is that happening? And what they found was that women who were working the same exact job as a man were being paid less and denied promotions, the ability to move forward, even if they had the same exact amount of education or even more so, more experience, their abilities were all the same, so on and so forth. So when in this 1960s time period, we're going to see that, well, watching African Americans and watching all of these different groups start to kind of rise up and ask for change and demand that things be different, women who, again, are feeling particularly held back for no other reason besides the fact that they're a woman, they're going to start to really, again, it's harder to ignore and accept. So they start to get together, just like all of these others. It feels very repetitive to me when I talk about it to you guys. But just like all the others, after again, everyone starts to talk, come together, and they're like, oh well. Oh, you're experiencing this exact same thing too. Well, maybe we should come together and ask for larger scale change. That these small discussions, these small group discussions, are going to be, I guess, justified or given a little bit more factual sort of evidence to be able to move forward and to inspire them a little bit more to be more active in what they're asking for is the publication of a book called The Feminine Mystique in 1963. This is a book written by a woman by the name of Betty Friedan, and it really did a nice job of capturing kind of the discontent, that feeling that women have in the country of that they're not, again, living up to their potential and that they're being forced into these situations that, again, they don't want to be. So it starts to encourage more and more women to kind of step forward and be like, hey, we would like some change. We want to be able to participate in our country in a much more active way overall. Um, this movement, of course, is going to have certain gains and losses across the board. Again, as things get kind of moving, the Civil Rights Act of 64 both encapsulates minority rights and the rights of women. If you think back to last unit, the Civil Rights Act of 64 had to do with discrimination in public places and hiring. So again, the hiring in particular is important for the women's rights movement because, of course, women also were being looked down upon or looked over for certain economic opportunities because of their gender, something they have no control over. As this movement starts to, excuse me, gain a little bit momentum, an official organization is going to be formed, and that's the National Organization for Women, or NOW. It starts very small. It's just 28 women, including Betty Friedan, and they're going to get together to organize what are the goals of this movement? What is it exactly that they're hoping to see be accomplished by the end of this? A lot of it focuses on the, again, workplace and employment. So one goal here is to push for childcare facilities. This is something that, again, most feminists, it's not like they want to fully reject the role that America has established for them as mother and homemaker. They, again, are still going to want to have children, they want to have families and things like that, but they'd also like to be able to work. And a lot of times, they would get looked over for jobs because of the fact that they were moms. So the idea of pushing for child care facilities, it just, again, it takes away that thing that, again, a lot of employers look at and they're like, well, we're not going to hire a woman. You're never going to be there because you're kids. So that's something they're, of course, are going to push to make sure that there isn't gender discrimination when hiring goes on. Again, amongst the individuals of now, is going to rise to the forefront a woman by the name of Gloria Steinem. Gloria Steinem she was a journalist, political activist, is a political activist still around today, huge supporter of women's rights, and she is going to kind of push a different direction with what NOW and other women are capable of. And she creates the National Women's Political Caucus, which is basically a political group that encourages women to run for office. And it's a pretty typical aspect of any of these civil rights movements that, again, they want to have more representation in the government so that laws are being passed that represent their goals and their desires. We're seeing here, too, that, again, Gloria Steinem is going to create what becomes kind of a touchstone for this movement, a magazine called Ms. And in it, it reports on contemporary issues from a feminist point of view, aka without any kind of gender bias. It's just something that is, and trying to explain ideas and cover topics in a way that isn't trying to pander to a particular group one way or the other. Other issues that come out as this movement gains momentum, as it moves around, as it changes. One is the importance of appearance. The social expectations of what a woman looks like are very different to a man. So it's something that definitely comes into play here. Exclusion from sports. And again, I'm not trying to say that women can participate in sports the same way as a man. Again, biologically, we are very different from each other. But the idea that they won't even let women play sports themselves, but with other women, things like that. That's what that's really looking from. And then, of course, other more minute things like, again, names for various different items, and then how they, again, are pandering to women or to men. It's still something that people talk about today. The idea that women's things are always named dainty items, where men's are always very super manly and masculine, and how that's silly and unnecessary. So when we look at kind of the again, various different legal changes that happen as a result of this movement, we're going to get all the way into the early part of the 70s, because obviously what's happening with Vietnam and what's happening with the other minority groups, that they're more priority, I guess, suppose, when it comes to actual legal action. So the Higher Education Act of 72 is focused on banning gender discrimination within educational programs, specifically thinking universities and colleges, which still had a lot of restrictions in regards to gender and what kind of programs women could be accepted in and what they couldn't, and stuff like that. Roe v. Wade is another obviously very controversial, and again, this is not a major issues class. We're not going to be debating the ins and the outs of this. This is just straightforward what is happening here. But it's establishing the right. Roe v. Wade is the decision to establish the right to abort a pregnancy in the first 3 months. This is something that the feminist movement looked at, is the fact that women get to decide for themselves what happens to their bodies after they become pregnant. And overall, this is, of course, controversial in a lot of different ways, not just in the idea of gender equality. That's all we're going to talk about today. Kind of keep it short and to the point. You've got work, again, to be kind of keeping track of here. Each day we'll have a little bit of notes similar to this, couple of slides, that you by today should have started your local history project, part 2. Again, it's something that goes into the rubric. Again, I will be putting something into a grade book kind of as a placeholder, just a little something to, I guess, see and to keep track of. Just a few points that whether or not you have edited or started this, or if you haven't. Again, you don't have to turn anything in for this check here. Again, I'm going to just be able to go into Classroom. You should be using the template. If you didn't use the template, you need to share it with me, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to see it. And then the other thing that you've got out there is the civil rights movement, compare and contrast. You're using your notes from last unit and this one to choose two movements. Well, choose a movement and compare it to the African American civil rights movement from last unit. At the end of the week, this unit is coming to a close. We'll have assessment. It's going to be on the Vietnam War era. It's going to be open the same window as always. If you don't complete it, you'll hear from me. The Unit 5 review packet is available on Classroom. You got to be finished before you take your assessment. Otherwise, guess what? It doesn't count and it doesn't help you. So please make sure you're paying attention to that. By 1 week from today, and I will remind you every single day, you need to complete your local history part 2. Again, it's going to be submitted through turnitin.com. Again, all of the information is on the how-to PowerPoint, which is in Classroom. That should say guidance and not goodance, because that's not a word. Again, you're going to check out those examples of students past, and you can all that stuff. Make sure you're emailing me with questions. And I hope you guys have a good day.